Balochistan, a land steeped in history and tradition, finds itself embroiled in a protracted struggle for autonomy. The Baloch people, with their distinct cultural identity and a deep-rooted connection to their land, have long yearned for self-determination. From the mountains to the Arabian Sea, Balochistan has witnessed centuries of upheaval, marked by tribal rivalries, foreign interventions, and a relentless pursuit of freedom. This struggle continues to this day, fueled by historical grievances, political marginalization, and allegations of human rights abuses. To understand the complexities of the Balochistan crisis, one must delve into the annals of history, tracing the threads of resistance and resilience that have shaped the region's fate. The Baloch people, predominantly residing in the Balochistan province of Pakistan, as well as parts of Iran and Afghanistan, have long asserted their distinct identity and aspirations for greater autonomy. Their struggle, spanning centuries, has been characterized by periods of both armed resistance and peaceful activism, all aimed at securing their political, economic, and cultural rights. This struggle for self-determination has often been met with harsh responses from the states claiming authority over Balochistan, leading to cycles of violence and mistrust. The Balochistan crisis is not merely a contemporary phenomenon. It is deeply intertwined with the region's history, marked by tribal dynamics, colonial interventions, and the tumultuous birth of new nations in the mid-20th century. The echoes of this tumultuous past resonate strongly in the present-day scenario. Balochistan remains a hotbed of geopolitical tensions, with accusations and counter-accusations flying between Pakistan and its neighbors. The Baloch insurgency, with its roots in the region's history of resistance, continues to challenge the Pakistani state's authority. The actions of Baloch militant groups, often accused of being supported by external actors, are met with heavy-handed responses from Pakistani security forces, further exacerbating the cycle of violence. This ongoing conflict has had a devastating impact on the lives of ordinary Baloch people who find themselves caught in the crossfire of a seemingly intractable struggle. Understanding the Balochistan crisis requires more than just a cursory glance at current events. It necessitates a deep dive into the historical currents that have shaped the region's trajectory. The story of Balochistan is one of resilience in the face of adversity, of a people determined to preserve their identity and chart their own destiny. It is a story that deserves to be told and understood in its entirety, for only then can the path towards a peaceful and just resolution be found. In the 12th century, the land that would become Balochistan was not a unified entity, but rather a patchwork of fiercely independent Baloch tribes. These tribes, each with its own customs, traditions and leaders, often found themselves locked in competition for resources and influence. The Makran, Kachi, Sistan and Turbat tribes were among the most prominent, their names etched into the very fabric of Balochistan's social and political landscape. Despite their shared heritage and a common language, these tribes lacked a cohesive political structure, leaving them vulnerable to external pressures. It was during this era of tribal fragmentation that a figure emerged who would leave an enduring mark on Baloch history, Mir Jalal Khan. A visionary leader hailing from the Rhine tribe, Mir Jalal Khan recognized the need for unity among the disparate Baloch tribes. Through diplomacy and strategic alliances, he managed to unite 44 of these tribes under his banner, laying the foundation for a collective Baloch identity. Mir Jalal Khan's achievement went beyond mere political consolidation. It fostered a sense of shared destiny among the Baloch people, paving the way for the emergence of a more cohesive and resilient Baloch society. Mir Jalal Khan's reign marked a turning point in Baloch history, ushering in an era of relative stability and laying the groundwork for the establishment of a centralized Baloch state. His legacy as the unifier of Baloch would resonate for centuries to come, inspiring generations of Baloch leaders to strive for unity and self-determination. The seeds of a distinct Baloch identity sown by Mir Jalal Khan would continue to flourish, eventually blossoming into the establishment of a Baloch state, the Khanate of Kalat. The unification efforts initiated by Mir Jalal Khan were further strengthened by subsequent Baloch leaders who recognized the importance of a united front in the face of external threats. One such leader was Mir Chaka Rind, who emerged in the 15th century and is still celebrated in Baloch folklore for his bravery and military prowess. Mir Chaka Rind's reign saw the consolidation of the Rind-Lashari Union, further solidifying the Baloch hold over the region and paving the way for the formal establishment of the Khanate of Kalat in the 17th century. This nascent state would become a beacon of Baloch identity and a symbol of their aspiration for self-rule. The 17th century witnessed a pivotal moment in Baloch history with the formal establishment of the Khanate of Kalat. This significant development was, in part, a response to the growing influence of the Safavid and Mughal empires, both vying for control over the strategically important region of Balochistan. The Ahmadzai Brahui tribe, under the leadership of Mir Ahmad Khan, rose to prominence, consolidating their power and establishing the Khanate of Kalat in 1666. This newly formed state, with its capital in Kalat, encompassed a vast swathe of land stretching from the borders of Persia in the west to the Indus River in the east. The Khanate of Kalat was not merely a geographical entity, it represented the crystallization of a distinct Baloch identity and the aspiration for self-governance. The Khan, while wielding considerable power, ruled in consultation with a council of tribal chiefs, a system that acknowledged the traditional power structures within Baloch society. This system of governance, a blend of centralized authority and tribal representation, would become a defining feature of the Khanate of Kalat. The Khanate of Kalat reached its zenith under the reign of Mir Nasir Khan Burst, who ascended to the throne in 1749. Mir Nasir Khan I's rule is often regarded as a golden age in Balochistan's history, marked by political stability, economic prosperity, and military strength. He oversaw the expansion of the Khanate's territory, strengthened its military capabilities, and established a system of law and order that earned him the respect of his subjects and the envy of his rivals. Mir Nasir Khan I's reign laid a strong foundation for the Khanate of Kalat, enabling it to withstand external pressures and assert its independence in a region increasingly coveted by powerful empires. However, the Khanate of Kalat's independence would not remain unchallenged. The 19th century ushered in an era of intense geopolitical rivalry, with the British Empire and the Tsarist Russia locked in a struggle for supremacy in Central Asia, a contest that would become known as the Great Game. This rivalry would have far-reaching consequences for Balochistan, drawing the Khanate of Kalat into the vortex of imperial machinations and ultimately leading to its downfall. The arrival of the British on the scene marked a turning point in Balochistan's history, setting in motion a chain of events that would forever alter the region's destiny. As the 19th century unfolded, the vast expanse of Balochistan became a focal point in the Great Game, the strategic rivalry between the British Empire and Tsarist Russia. The British, eager to safeguard their prized possession, India from Russian encroachment, viewed Balochistan as a crucial buffer zone. This strategic calculus led them to cast a covetous eye on the Khanate of Kalat, seeking to extend their influence over this strategically important region. The British adopted a two-pronged approach combining diplomacy and military might to secure their interests in Balochistan. In 1839, driven by suspicions of the Khan of Kalat's alleged alliance with the Afghans, the British launched a military offensive against the Khanate. The ensuing conflict resulted in the death of Mehrab Khan, the then ruler of Kalat, and the imposition of a British resident in the Khanate's court. This marked the beginning of British ascendancy in Balochistan and the gradual erosion of the Khanate's independence. The British, having established a foothold, began to exert their influence over the Khanate's affairs. To formalize their control over Balochistan, the British signed the Treaty of Kalat with the Khan in 1876. The treaty, while ostensibly recognizing the Khanate of Kalat as an independent state, contained clauses that effectively subordinated Kalat's foreign policy to British interests. In exchange for their protection and a meager annual stipend, the Khan of Kalat was compelled to cede control over the Khanate's external relations to the British. This treaty, a testament to British diplomatic maneuvering, effectively turned the Khanate of Kalat into a protectorate of the British Empire. The British, having secured their interests in Balochistan through the Treaty of Kalat, went a step further in 1887 by formally establishing the province of British Balochistan. This new province, carved out of territories directly administered by the British, marked the first official use of the term Balochistan to denote a distinct political entity. The creation of British Balochistan, a clear manifestation of British imperial ambitions, further cemented their control over the region and set the stage for the complex political landscape that would emerge in the 20th century. The Baloch people, once masters of their own destiny, now found themselves subjects of the British Crown, their fate intertwined with the machinations of an empire in its twilight years. Section 5. Partitions shadow the forced merger of Balochistan. The winds of change sweeping across the Indian subcontinent in the mid-20th century did not bypass Balochistan. As the British Empire prepared to relinquish its hold over India, the fate of the Khanate of Kalat, like many other princely states, hung in the balance. The Khan of Kalat, Mir Ahmad Yar Khan, sensing an opportunity to reclaim his state's lost sovereignty, declared independence on August 11, 1947, just 3 days before India and Pakistan gained their independence. This declaration, rooted in the belief that the Treaty of Kalat had been rendered null and void with the departure of the British, set the stage for a confrontation with the newly created state of Pakistan. Pakistan, under the leadership of Muhammad Ali Jinnah, was quick to challenge Kalat's independence. Jinnah, while having previously served as the Khan's legal advisor and acknowledging Kalat's historical sovereignty, argued that the accession of the Khanate to Pakistan was essential for the viability of the newly formed Muslim-majority state. Negotiations ensued, but the two sides failed to bridge their differences. Pakistan, determined to incorporate Balochistan into its fold, resorted to a combination of political pressure, military intimidation, and the exploitation of internal divisions within the Khanate. On March 27, 1948, under duress and facing the threat of a full-blown military invasion, the Khan of Kalat signed the instrument of accession, formally merging Balochistan with Pakistan. This event, widely perceived by the Baloch as a forced annexation, marked the beginning of a tumultuous new chapter in Balochistan's history. The Baloch people, their aspirations for an independent state dashed, found themselves incorporated into a nation where they felt marginalized, their voices often ignored, and their grievances unaddressed. The forced merger of Balochistan with Pakistan sowed the seeds of discontent and resentment among the Baloch people, setting the stage for decades of political unrest, armed insurgency, and a relentless struggle for autonomy. The Baloch, feeling betrayed and marginalized, viewed the merger as a continuation of the colonial subjugation they had endured under British rule, albeit now under the dominion of a new master. This sense of historical injustice would fuel their resistance, driving generations of Baloch to challenge the Pakistani state's authority and demand their right to self-determination. Section 6. A legacy of resistance, from guerrilla warfare to uprising. The forced accession of Balochistan to Pakistan in 1948 did not extinguish the flames of Baloch nationalism. Instead, it ignited a spirit of resistance that would manifest in various forms over the ensuing decades. Prince Abdul Karim, the brother of the Khan of Kalat, emerged as a leading figure in the early years of this resistance. In 1948, he launched a guerrilla war against the Pakistani state, rallying Baloch tribesmen to his cause and challenging the writ of the Pakistani government in the vast expanse of Balochistan. However, Abdul Karim's rebellion was short-lived. Outmatched and outgunned by the superior firepower of the Pakistani army, he was forced to flee to Afghanistan, where he continued to advocate for Baloch independence. His rebellion, though ultimately unsuccessful in dislodging the Pakistani state from Balochistan, ignited a spark of resistance that would continue to smolder and periodically erupt in the decades to come. The Baloch people's struggle for autonomy faced further setbacks with the introduction of Pakistan's one-unit policy in 1955. This policy, aimed at consolidating West Pakistan into a single administrative unit, dissolved the provinces of West Pakistan, including Balochistan, and effectively merged them under a centralized authority dominated by the Punjabi ethnic group. The Baloch, already feeling marginalized after the forced annexation, viewed the one-unit policy as a blatant attempt to erase their identity and subsume them within a Punjabi-dominated political structure. The Baloch resentment towards the one-unit policy found a powerful voice in Nawab Nawroz Khan, a respected Baloch leader who had initially supported the accession to Pakistan. Incensed by the dissolution of Balochistan as a province and the perceived marginalization of the Baloch people, Nawroz Khan took up arms against the Pakistani state in 1958. His uprising, fueled by popular anger against the one-unit policy, posed a significant challenge to the Pakistani government, forcing them to deploy substantial military force to quell the rebellion. Nawab Nawroz Khan's rebellion, though brutally crushed by the Pakistani army, further solidified the legacy of Baloch resistance and highlighted the deep-seated grievances of the Baloch people. His name, etched in the annals of Baloch history, would serve as a rallying cry for future generations of Baloch nationalists. The one-unit policy, though ultimately abandoned in 1970, left a bitter legacy in Balochistan, further alienating the Baloch people and solidifying their distrust of the Pakistani state. Section 7. A new generation's fight the modern Baloch insurgency. The embers of Baloch resistance, smouldering for decades, erupted with renewed vigor in the early 21st century with the emergence of a full-blown insurgency in Balochistan, fueled by a complex interplay of historical grievances, political marginalization, allegations of human rights abuses, and the perceived exploitation of Balochistan's natural resources. The modern Baloch insurgency has posed a persistent challenge to the Pakistani state's authority. Unlike previous uprisings, which were largely localized and tribal, the modern Baloch insurgency is characterized by greater coordination among different Baloch nationalist groups, the use of sophisticated guerrilla tactics, and a more organized media strategy aimed at garnering international attention. The Balochistan Liberation Army, formed in the early 2000s, has emerged as the most prominent of the Baloch separatist groups. The BLA, designated as a terrorist organization by Pakistan, the United States and the United Kingdom, has been accused of carrying out numerous attacks targeting Pakistani security forces, government installations and infrastructure projects. The BLA claims to be fighting for the creation of an independent Balochistan, free from what it perceives as Pakistani oppression. The Pakistani government's response to the Baloch insurgency has been characterized by a combination of military operations, development initiatives aimed at addressing economic grievances, and attempts to engage with Baloch nationalist leaders. However, a climate of mistrust and suspicion continues to hamper efforts to find a lasting solution. The Baloch, on their part, accuse the Pakistani state of using excessive force, carrying out extrajudicial killings, and suppressing dissent under the garb of counter-terrorism operations. International human rights organizations have also raised concerns about the human rights situation in Balochistan, alleging enforced disappearances, torture, and a lack of accountability for abuses committed by security forces. The modern Baloch insurgency is not just a struggle for political autonomy, it is a fight for the soul of Balochistan. It reflects the deep-seated aspirations of the Baloch people for control over their land, resources, and destiny. The conflict, marked by violence, mistrust, and a lack of political will to address the root causes, shows no signs of abating. Finding a lasting solution to the Balochistan crisis requires a fundamental shift in the relationship between the Pakistani state and the Baloch people, one based on mutual respect, dialogue, and a genuine commitment to addressing the legitimate grievances of the Baloch people. Section 8. Regional fault lines, accusations and international implications. The Balochistan conflict, while rooted in local grievances and historical injustices, is not confined to the geographical boundaries of Pakistan. The region's geostrategic location, bordering Afghanistan and Iran, has made it a crucible of regional rivalries, with external actors often accused of playing a role in stoking the flames of the insurgency. Pakistan has repeatedly accused India and Afghanistan of providing material and logistical support to Baloch separatist groups. using them as proxies to destabilize Pakistan and undermine its economic development. India, for its part, denies any involvement in the Baloch insurgency, accusing Pakistan of using the Balochistan card to deflect attention from its own internal problems and its alleged support for militant groups operating in Indian-administered Kashmir. The accusations and counter-accusations between India and Pakistan, often amplified through media narratives and political rhetoric, have further poisoned the relationship between the two nuclear-armed neighbors, making it even more challenging to find common ground on the Balochistan issue. Afghanistan, grappling with its own internal turmoil and instability, has also been drawn into the vortex of the Balochistan conflict. The porous border between Afghanistan and Pakistan has been exploited by Baloch militant groups seeking refuge and sanctuary. Pakistan accuses Afghanistan of providing safe havens to Baloch separatists and failing to take concrete measures to prevent cross-border infiltration. The Afghan government, however, denies these allegations, pointing to its own struggles with militancy and its limited capacity to effectively police its vast and porous border with Pakistan. The Balochistan conflict, with its regional dimensions and the involvement of external actors, has the potential to further destabilize an already volatile region. Finding a lasting solution requires not only addressing the legitimate grievances of the Baloch people, but also fostering greater regional cooperation and dialogue to address the security concerns of all stakeholders. Ignoring the regional dimensions of the conflict risks exacerbating tensions, leading to a wider conflagration with potentially catastrophic consequences. Section 9. Climate change, a threat multiplier in Balochistan. The convergence of political turmoil and environmental degradation presents a formidable challenge for the people of Balochistan. Already grappling with the consequences of a protracted insurgency, the region is now facing the increasingly devastating impacts of climate change. Balochistan, being arid and semi-arid, is highly susceptible to droughts, floods, and extreme temperatures, all of which are projected to intensify in the coming years due to climate change. These environmental stresses are exacerbating existing vulnerabilities, putting immense pressure on water resources, agriculture and livelihoods, and driving displacement and conflict over scarce resources. The impacts of climate change are particularly acute for Balochistan's marginalized communities, who are disproportionately dependent on natural resources for their livelihoods. Small-scale farmers and pastoralists already struggling with poverty and lack of access to basic services are bearing the brunt of climate change impacts, facing crop failures, livestock losses and water scarcity. These climate-induced hardships are forcing many to abandon their traditional ways of life, leading to increased urbanization, competition for scarce resources in urban centers, and social unrest. The youth of Balochistan, already grappling with limited economic opportunities and a sense of political disenfranchisement, are particularly vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. The growing uncertainty and precarity brought on by environmental degradation are fueling a sense of hopelessness and despair among young people, pushing some towards extremism and violence. Addressing the climate crisis in Balochistan is not just an environmental imperative, it is essential for building peace and stability in the region. Addressing the complex challenges facing Balochistan requires a multi-pronged approach that recognizes the interconnected nature of political, social, economic, and environmental factors. Investing in climate-resilient development, empowering local communities, promoting sustainable resource management practices, and addressing the political and economic grievances that fuel the insurgency are all crucial for building a more sustainable and equitable future for the people of Balochistan.